Okay, I'm not used to use this Google's Meet. So can you see my screen? Okay, I will do. Okay, here we go. Can you see? Yeah. So, colleagues, thank you very much for the invitation, first of all. And my name is Erkin I'm currently working at WMO. Joined it in two departments with the agrometeorology section in the service department, and also 40% I am working for Earth System Data Prediction department at WMO, mainly leading integration of artificial intelligence in end-to-end, not only agrometeorological services, but also hydrometeorological services. And today with me is Catherine Jones. She is anticipatory action lead and also natural resource and resilience officer based in Bangkok, FAO. And today we want to present some example about drought triggering methodology for anticipatory action. It's example from PNG, Papua New Guinea. So before joining WMO, I was working with FAO, regional office for Asian and Pacific office based in Bangkok as agrometeorological lead. And this work done that time, it's about 2.5 years ago. Uh, Today we want to co-present it with Catherine Jones. Okay, let me start. Yeah, this is example for Papua New Guinea for drought triggering methodology for anticipatory action, and this was developed by National Meteorological Office of PNG and basically with FAO. And here in the left side, it was there like by that time, 3 years ago, when we just started piloting anticipatory action program there was like existing system in the past. They were like providing this kind of drought maps based on a combination of three indexes, like rainfall, observed is calculated by SPI3 remote sensing, vegetation health index for 3 months, and 3 months total rainfall forecast. And but for humanitarian purpose, it was a bit difficult for us to understand when like drought watch, drought alert, drought critical to start anticipatory action protocol, to start anticipatory actions to reduce this humanitarian crisis related to the drought. And that time, together with Met Office of PNG and FAO colleagues, we tried to develop also include other complementary variables and indicators for common drought index, and we access it and conduct assessment to availability of the ground rainfall observation, because so far in the existing that time system there was only like remote sensing based. But we know that PNG is very mountainous country, very complex terrain, and that's why it's available of ground rainfall observation, soil moisture, and also integrating for forecast bias correction of Indian Ocean dipole, El Nino, Southern Oscillation, and also Modern Julian Oscillations. That what time was critical. And here is a slide about, I think my colleague Catherine will talk about this in more details about what is anticipatory action. And I want to quickly tell that anticipatory action will be taken before the shock will start, the shock will event and hazard will happen, to reduce this humanitarian crisis. So of course we cannot reduce everything, it will be left over, but reduce this crisis and reduce this damage. And here we try that time, like 3 years ago, started to testing not for national level, for some targeted most like vulnerable communities based and farmers, region, province and districts here in the blue circles. And also the main challenge during this, here's a temporal and spatial scale of anticipatory action where it fits. So we can see here is like, and during that period, there was main challenge in application of agrometeorology for developing hazard triggering methodology for anticipated direction, not only for drought, for basically most of the um, hazards. It was like big two reasons. One is low occurrence of meteorological forecast, rainfall and temperature. If you are talking about drought, it's like 3 months rainfall forecast, 3 to 6 months, and also monitoring gaps observation. And so that's why it was main big challenges, and we tried to somehow address this challenge. And here we started that time to understanding the correlation between ENSO and also SPI standard precipitation index for 3 months. Calculating how it's correlated, it was feasible, but some and also for not only ENSO but also Indian Ocean Dipole and other atmospheric indicators, global. Uh, Also how it's like interaction between vegetation health index and also SPI, understands the lead time of interaction between when it's like drought started and how this a reflection of from this vegetation. We want to see this kind of, we conducted cross correlation analysis for soil moisture as well, basically remote sensing soil moisture from surface soil moisture and root zone soil moisture to understand which indicator better to use in terms of monitoring and forecasting of the drought. And here was like on that time, like 3 years ago, commonly used across FAO FAO pilot region for drought anticipated reactions, this kind of triggering methodology. There was like assessed like indexes like SPI for last 1 month, rainfall, Indian Ocean dipole, soil moisture, but there was fixed weighting systems used to calculate the total common drought index. And also we calculated this retrospectively to understand how this common drought index with the weighted index works. It showed not bad results, but I will tell you later the main gap of this methodology. And yeah, we conducted first two pilot region, and the government requested to do it for all territory of PNG. We conducted it for all territory of PNG and did this kind of provincial weighting system. And we piloted it and tested. At that time, it was like showed more or less medium results. And we activated once it's reached 60% of common drought index anticipation protocols. And we can see where it's like reached in 2024. It was October calculation, just example. But after testing one season, we found main gaps of this methodology because the weighting system was inconsistent from grid to grid, as the territory of PNG is very complex mountains region. So and solution we targeted avoid weighting system and calculate common drought index every grid, not in provincial average, but also grid based, but also using like um, not like strict weighting systems like static weighting system or dynamical weighting systems. And also when we are like using for prediction element, it was like multi-collinearity effect. One index, Indian Ocean dipole, is correlated with ENSO correlated, and also all of them are correlated each other as it's one structure. And to avoid this multi-collinearity effect, we tried to utilize AI, artificial intelligence, basically machine learning approach, tested more than 7 algorithms of machine learning for convolution neural network, random forest regression with high parameter tuning, XGBoost regression with high parameter tuning, and so on, and found the best. But and also found that by when we are using this like machine learning algorithms, like short-term, long-term memory and others, so this multi-collinearity effect is automatically resolved. It's also taken in account that this kind of predictors are correlated to each other. And we are using this algorithm for bias correction of seasonal forecast. And gap in rainfall observation. So we did this kind of monthly data assimilation using existing in-situ observation and remote sensing observation of rainfall. But in previous system, it was only used remote sensing data. And here what we started, so analyzing the existing observation coverage of rainfall. Typically, it's like in meteorology and standards, we said that 100-kilometer radius is covered by this weather. It can catch one meteor station, but on the reality, if you have very complex orography, if you have depending on the exposition and digitalization model of this topography, the coverage of meteor station will be different from point to point, from station to station. That's why we conducted this kind of analysis. So it was first we cut it like 100-kilometer radius where is across this like station, and then by using elevation, if it's above and below, and or based on the exposition, also we use some AI techniques and also some WRF archived model high resolution to calculate the weather patterns where it's really we are covering, where we can use observation. It means like it's really covers the weather where we don't have, and where we don't have the coverage of the observation, we try to find which remote sensing derived rainfall estimate is better. And but in previous Met Office results, they were found top four, not top three remote sensing source, and we tried to find which one is the best. And here's the comparison of the best two, and we found this chirps 2.0 with 5-kilometer resolution is appropriate in the Taylor diagram based on this standard deviation, correlation coefficient, and root mean square error. We can see this like a more closer. This red one is the chirps dataset points, and we can see also rainfall, muzzle rainfall. We can see here's bias of this chirps is smaller for this two station. I put here only two station just to show some example, and we decide to use chirps 2.0 for coverage of the gap zone where we're not covering with the rainfall in-situ observation. And here was the other station as well, we did similar analysis. And then once we understood where we will like use this, what kind of remote sensing in this gap zones of observation, and also this time also like there was where when we have very mountainous country, the rainfall like 1 month, 3 months rainfall forecast was not in good accuracy in terms of deterministic, not probabilistic. That's why we try to do the bias correction of 3 months rainfall forecast by using input parameter. And as I mentioned it before, we tried to use 7 algorithms, and we found this one of XGBoost regressor with high parameter tuning, the best in terms of optimal in terms of accuracy, and also in terms of like GPU needed for like train also run, because there was also other algorithm which will need more computational time. And this one was more appropriate, and we trained it by using 3 months rainfall observation from in situ, and also archived Indian Ocean dipole. It was used more than 20 years, daily, monthly indicators, and also we divided 70 by 30, 70% for training, 30% for verification. And also these indexes, and also archived forecast, and also hindcast of ECWMF forecast. And also why we are using just ECWMF forecast for 3 months rainfall forecast, because previously by Met Office they are already conducted between Access and other existing global seasonal sub-seasonal models products, which one is the most accurate for the region. And they said this ECWMF was more accurate, and based on their we tried to further tune and blending this model. And also for input for operational bias correction, it was monthly, every month from the beginning. This Indian Ocean Dipole monthly and ENSO indexes monitored and forecasted, and also 3 months rainfall forecast downloaded and bias corrected. And then we can see here bias correction for red one is bias corrected, black one, this is 1 to 8 is the station numbers. Where we verify this approach, we can see it's like significantly increased accuracy performance of this rainfall forecast after bias correction. And we can see here also 3 months rainfall forecast example for annual. So we can see for this was like 2023 bias corrected result, because 30% we left for verification, and we want to see how it will like perform. So in the green we can see this like bias corrected version is more closer for the observation in blue line. So in yellow it's like before bias correction. So we can see significant bias correction and adjustment where is like mountains region stations. For example, this like what's the name of the station, Vivaka and others, but where it's like Wally station, more or less they also improved, but not similar like in mountains region. And after we understand what we will use for what kind of remote sensing data most accurate for monitoring of SPIs one for 1 month, and also understand and applying this kind of bias correction of seasonal forecast of rainfall. And we use this kind of drought classification from WMO handbook on 2010 of the drought. It's like after name it like Mark Swobod and others. So we use that classification for SPI, soil moisture index, vegetation health index. So based on that classification book, it's like this is a classification of drought: no drought, mild drought, moderate, severe drought, extreme drought. But based on this classification, we did classification of combined drought indexes, and we put here like SPI3 is forecasted element, SPI1 observed, soil moisture for 1 month also observed, and vegetation health index for 1 month also observed. So you should understand last month what's the situation now, and based on this upcoming 3 months forecast, what kind will be drought. If you have, for example, observed mild drought and it forecasted mild drought, it might be a moderate drought. But if you have no drought and it forecasted mild drought, it will be just mild drought, and it's not critical for this conducting anticipatory action, because anticipatory action should be conducted once it's become critical, because the resource of this government and humanitarian partners is limited. They want to reduce humanitarian crisis. But if say like only 20% of their yield or 10% will be damaged, it will not lead to humanitarian crisis. And based on that, we set up this kind of common drought index classification, and this kind of technique, hit kill skill score, use it for verifying this common drought index, combined drought indexes. And here we put 2 example. So this is like more than 20 years yield productivity for main crop type of that region of Papua New Guinea. It's a Western Province and Western Highland Province. We can see here is like the in different color. It's like drought, common drought index calculated for that period based on that methodology. And also we can see here in the right hand is where is like drought happened. We can see like a reduction of this yield by that year. And here is in the table of hit kill score, we can see like skills of this Western or Western Highland province of this performance of this methodology of CDI with 3 months lead time. We calculated for this 1993, 2023. So we can see for no drought is very good. currency, but mild drought and also moderate drought and severe drought. But based on this is verification, how it's like verified, but also we tried to verify with soil moisture, observe it in these 3 months, first month, second, third month. Here this with CDI predicted for 3 months lead time. So it means it's, we can see green is matched 100%. White is I think is like down estimated, forecast. Yellow is overestimated. We can see it's also performances so far is good, calculated from 1997 to 2023. But here we put only where we had drought episode observed against to soil moisture and 3 months rainfall forecast, 3 months CDI forecast. And here is basic algorithm summarizing this methodology. So here is we can see like bias corrected rainfall by using this machine learning algorithm, and also observe it soil moisture with the tertiary health index and SPI, all of them for averaged for 1 month. And here calculation common drought indexes, and based on this where it's fitting here or there, common drought index will be alerted mild drought, moderate drought, severe drought. And we found and the next step is if it's moderate drought is based on the threshold, based on the soil moisture and based on the loss and damage from the yield productivity, and also with the consultation of Minister of Agriculture. They said it's like this is a threshold for activation of anticipated action, and we set up the threshold is moderate drought. And first step assets like they don't have very good coverage in terms of in situ observation of rainfall, basically derived from remote sensing, and also there is also still some not 100% seasonal forecast, and also taking in account drought is a slow onset. We have like 3-4 days for field verification. So the first step of every month, first week of every month, they are calculating CDI. If it will reach the threshold, they are doing step 2 of verification. They are doing field mission to validate where it's reached, in which province, in which grid. This indexes, once it's verified, anticipated action, activation of anticipated action happened to secure this fund, not avoid the misalerting. Those 2 steps of triggering methodology. Second step, yes, mentioned they are going to the field mission to validate before the activation, because drought is slow onset. We have still 3-5 days for validation. And here is the basic algorithm from that paper we published at that time. So first is like we developed this kind of triggering methodology, planning, and Catherine will speak about this more, and I will just skip. Yeah, and also the one example of this is low PDR. So creating this kind of crisis timeline based on their crop calendar here, crop calendar based on this rainfall, dry year or wet year, based on this what kind of crop are growing when, and also based on the CDI, common drought index, what kind of phased approach will be taken to do for anticipated action. Because if this threshold will reach here during this wet season of just started, this kind of phase 1 for crop protection, for addressing rainfall, because depending on the phenological state of the crop, different anticipated action should be taken, and depending on this CDI level, like moderate drought or mild drought or severe drought, different action should be taken. Yeah, here's the phases, just example. And yeah, that's all from my side. I want to hand over to my colleague, Catherine.
Thanks so much, Erkin, and hi everyone. Nice to see so many people here. I didn't notice if there was a chat box because I have a link to the paper that Erkin was just mentioned too, but maybe we can send that link to the organisers. But good afternoon, everyone. My name's Catherine Jones. As Erkin kindly introduced me before, I am the Disaster Resilience Officer here at the FAO Regional Office in Bangkok. And I also have been leading the Anticipatory Action Program here in the region for the last last 6 years now. So I'm very excited to present to you what did we do based on all that good information that Erkin just presented on the Combined Drought Index. Thank you, Erkin. You were much smarter than me at finding the link to the chat box. But if you give me a second, I'm just going to pull up my slides. This one here, share. Hopefully you can all see that okay. Perfect. So I'm going to be presenting a little bit more on the action side. So why is it important that we have this information available to us, and what does that lead to? So what we did back in 2023 and 2024 was quite experimental, and it led to one of the first pilots of anticipatory action in Papua New Guinea. Now, Erkin already kind of flashed a bit of a definition around the approach, but just to give you a bit of a reminder, anticipatory action is about taking steps to protect people and their livelihoods before a disaster strikes. That's really important to keep in mind. It's all before the disaster happens. So we're really using early warning information and acting on forecasts rather than waiting for the worst to materialize. Now, you may have heard of early warning, early action or forecast-based financing before. I just really want to emphasize that you are in good company. They all mean the same thing. I do not know why we decided to create 3 terms for the one area. There is convergence now towards more anticipatory action. But if you find yourself thinking about early warning, early action or forecast-based financing, or it pops up in a paper, I just want you to feel calm that you are in the right space. It all means the same thing about acting before the shock. And hopefully we'll see that terminology be cleaned up in the years to come. Now, why is it important to invest in anticipatory action? Various governments I've spoken to and communities across the region have had 3 key reasons that have come up. It can reduce humanitarian impact and response costs. This is massive for governments in particular. They're very focused on this kind of saving of economics and costing. For community level, it's more dignified. I think many of us would also sympathize with those in these crisis situations where if our job was on the line and we were given the ability to protect it, we would take that. So it's ensuring that we provide that more dignified approach for communities to make decisions to protect their key assets. And then finally, it's also an opportunity to protect critical development gains. So what we've seen through various investments, you can have, particularly in the agricultural sphere, if someone has, bought a goat, bought a whole bunch of chickens, we want to give them the chance to protect that critical asset that they've also invested into as well. And anticipatory action offers that way forward. How we look at it is in 3 key building blocks as well. And these are part of the technical standards that were developed by the Asia Pacific Technical Working Group on Anticipatory Action, which I also co-lead, but also a part of the ASEAN Anticipatory Action Guidelines as well. Now, with these 3 building blocks, Erkin has really gone in depth on the first one. So the risk information, forecasting, and early warning systems. This is where our triggers, this is our alert to tell us something bad is going to happen and we need to do something now. So that's all about that first pillar. The second pillar is about the planning, the operations. What do we do once we have that alert? Transforming that into action that protects and mitigates from the shock as much as we can. And then the third pillar is about financing. How do we pay for all of this? How do we ensure that what we want to protect and mitigate can be actually come into play and can be paid for? Now, I'm going to be focusing a bit more on this building block 2 and 3, as Erkin has very much done a deep dive into the building block 1 for Papua New Guinea. Now, why did we look at Papua New Guinea? Now, the ENSO or El Nino has a particularly strong correlation with the climate in Papua New Guinea alongside the Indian Ocean dipole, of course, and it leads to 2 very polarizing impacts. The first being during really strong events, we can see frosts right up in the highland areas that can devastate crops and stunt growth, and this is mainly due to that kind of high altitude that is on offer in Papua New Guinea. Then on the other side of the fence is drought. And this is what we were looking at primarily in Kyunga in the Western Province, the area that we piloted in and Erkin was speaking to, where we can see decreased rainfall, increased temperatures. This leads to stress on agricultural systems, and the country is largely subsistence-based. A lot of the country relies on growing and producing its own food because of the rural and inaccessible nature of the country as well. It's very big, very complex transport systems. So we can see massive food shortages, but as well as displacement, because people then start to move to find food. Now, we've learned this in particular across the past few years, and I've already kind of highlighted some of these impacts here, but with agricultural drought, we see it happening for extended periods in the country as well. And what we've learned is it's not only on crops, but also water management is a big issue when we're looking at drought. Naturally, water and crops go hand in hand, and you need a hydrometeorological drought to then progress to your agricultural drought. The country is known to grow food that are quite robust to drought conditions, such as sweet potato or taro, cassava as well, and sago palm is another big crop. But basically the droughts can get so bad that these more tolerant varieties start to get adversely affected as well. So it's really important for us when an El Nino with a positive Indian Ocean dipole comes through and they correlate, for us to really step up and look at what we can do to mitigate drought. Now, we saw this, for instance, in 2015 and 16, which was one of the biggest and most widespread droughts that we saw in Papua New Guinea. It affected around 2.4 million people, or 40% of the national population, which is massive. And then we saw massive food shortages, increase of communicable diseases, and water shortages also worsened. Schools also were forced to close, and many businesses suffered significant losses. So from that event, the government of Papua New Guinea was very keen to look towards alternatives to what we could do to prevent and mitigate as much as we can future indigencies. So when 2023 came around and we saw a similar pattern emerging, we were very keen to see what we can do to shift the dial more towards anticipatory action. Now, I also want to highlight this as well, as whilst there's a very, very big strong correlation that we've seen with El Nino events in Papua New Guinea, it is, and all of you would know this all too well, as kind of the meteorological, hydrological side, is not every El Nino event leads to this. So it's just a disclaimer I like to add as well, that we know that not every single one is correlated. There's just a strong relationship that we need to take into play. Now, I'm not going to go through this in detail because Erkin kindly already did it. So our first phase, for instance, was looking at the combined drought index. So setting this up, understanding what our alert system could look like, and having that in a hand. So once in November 2023, we had this ready to go, and our first alert went off in a range of provinces. So we had below average rainfall combined, or the combined drought index, alongside a range of the indicators just presented. So soil moisture, rainfall, temperature, El Nino, Indian Ocean dipole, all coming together to say, oh, we've got some hot spots emerging. This included Western Province, Malene Bay, Central Province, Chimbu, and Madang. So a few areas across the country were starting to be kind of our hot areas and at risk of experiencing dry conditions over the 3 to 6 month period. And so we, based on this information, and we didn't have, unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of funding. We only had pilot finance to really move this forward. So we focused on Western Province, where we know we could do some tangible action ahead of the forecasted agricultural drought. So we had set up also a crisis timeline, which is really important for us to map out how climate patterns, seasonality, impact on crops, livestock, come into play. So then we can map everything together. Now, the important thing about Papua New Guinea is that we work on a rotational cropping process. It means we don't have a season for growing certain crops versus others. It's just on a rotational basis. You plant, you grow, you sow, you plant, you grow, you sow. And that's just a continuous rhythm throughout the year because of the tropical band that it sits in and the type of crops that it's also growing. So we use this as kind of an anchor for us to understand when we would expect to see the impacts on both crops and livestock, and what our window of opportunity was. So we can see here it's between October all the way through to probably around March where we see the most impact come in for anticipatory action. So what did we do? Getting to the crux of it, we did a range of 5 different anticipatory actions. We did multi-purpose cash distribution, but also digital literacy of communities as well who may be receiving their first bank account. We did drought-resistant seeds, water harvesting support, so that was mainly through water tank installments, early warning messages on social media, but also through community leaders as well as extension workers from the Department of Agriculture and Livestock, and then also food preservation. So what food that they had growing at the moment and they were harvesting, ensuring that we found alternative ways to keep them fresh or stored to prevent rotting, but also longer shelf life as well. Now, what we found with this particular process is we did a return on impact study on the interventions to see how they worked. And we found that water access was one of the most critical areas for us to invest in. And we saw that water tanks that we installed enabled 98.5% of households to store water, reduced the time that they spent collecting water, but also supported food production and improving healthy hygiene and health practices as well, particularly as the river level started to decline. We saw in these areas as well that women often bear the greatest burden when it comes to drought, but they also received the greatest gains when it came to the anticipatory actions, particularly when we see that women had the tendency to go and collect the water and be the main providers of the food and care for the family. So being able to move those water sources closer and support water management within the community was really important. And enabled the share of labour also to be reduced, particularly for them when they would have to go further and into the bush to seek more alternative sources. We found that livelihoods became stabilised and future resilience was also strengthened. So families were also able to comprehend better what they could do to prevent or mitigate a drought in the future. But we also managed to protect the cropping and the production processes that were going on in the community. We saw that early warnings translated into action. And this is a place where I know many of us in this call are very familiar with the Early Warning for All initiative, where we want to reach everyone across the world by 2027. Now, Papua New Guinea for me is a very key place where we need to start thinking about this because it's not an area where radio works. It's not an area where you can get cell phone connection. So we were able to translate these warnings through using community leaders and extension workers, but it really highlights to me strongly the need for better communication and technology out there. But then finally as well, when we're looking at anticipatory action, we saw that it was cost effective. And this is in an environment that is very hard transport-wise to get to and very expensive. So accessibility and cost is through the roof. And we still saw a positive return on investment. So if every dollar invested on a conservative note got up to nearly $2 in avoided losses and added benefits, and a more kind of broader benefit scope, it got up to nearly $3.5 in avoided losses and added benefits. So we're starting to see that even in these more isolated places, the benefit of doing anticipatory action. Now, I've only got 2 quick slides and then I'll wrap up. I just wanted to share kind of some of those lessons learned. So on a short term, what we were thinking moving forward in Papua New Guinea is we really want to strengthen the accuracy and routine use of the Combined Drought Index. It was fantastic that we set this up and piloted it, but making sure it becomes part of the fabric of Papua New Guinea's agricultural drought management system still needs to happen. So we're trying to figure out pathways and support that we can offer the government to do that. What we found also with the agricultural drought is was swiftly followed by a flood. Now, I know that Papua New Guinea is not isolated when it comes to this, but we have to take a multi-hazard perspective when we're looking at risk in this country and in this particular area was one where I saw this happen very, very clearly because the soil was eroded. People were moving their gardens closer to the riverbed to make sure they could make the most of the water in the river at the time. Then were heavily impacted by this flood that came through. So if we're looking at preventing and mitigating for one risk, there's always going to be another one that comes through and could be compounded by a risk such as drought, which has a tendency to erode soil and make flooding more impactful at that time. So yeah, really interesting kind of multi-hazard pool for Papua New Guinea in that way. We wanted to look at developing a practical handbook as well as outlining very clearly how these triggers and the combined drought index can relate to action that doesn't require always out external support. So what can extension workers do? What can communities do if they receive that information? It's important that if they receive that information is a key element that we need to work on also in Papua New Guinea. We also want to build on existing infrastructure and resilience measures such as water systems and livestock protection. So for instance, it's looking at maybe installing water tanks earlier and looking at ways that we can then ration water or support water management within the community. So not during the trigger being met that we're rushing to flood everything in, but building resilience of the community up and enabling kind of more short-term actions that can be taken by the community to come in when we have that trigger go off. This is particularly important for a country like Papua New Guinea that does suffer from transport issues and linkages. So finding ways that we can build on resilience or build up the resilience to then have early warnings and community work do most of the brunt of the push, I think will be important moving forward. We also want to extend our work and train extension workers. That will be really important. And then finally here is to also establish a joint communication SOP. So really ensuring that early warnings are clear. How do they get the extension workers into the communities through existing channels that we currently have? But then looking more long-term, ensuring that we are building up those systems as well. Now, finally, this is my last slide, is long-term recommendations. We would love to see, moving forward, anticipatory action embedded within the national disaster risk, agriculture and climate systems, and seeing that shift from reactive to proactive approaches. We do know there's a lot of drought monitoring that's going on in Papua New Guinea at the moment, but we want to keep on building up this particular area with the combined drought index that enables us to take action. So current forecasting mechanisms in place kind of give a generic, okay, there might be something happening or a color coding of a particular risk level, but it doesn't connect to action itself. Developing an agriculture disaster risk management plan could also be one key area there. When we're looking at drought and agricultural drought specifically, the biggest risks or the biggest impact that we see in loss and damage data is in the agriculture sector. So ensuring that we are planning accordingly, not only in anticipation, but also response and in the broader DRM planning is going to be important. Seeing how we can also link this to financing mechanisms within the country, including insurance could be one avenue that we could look into, but what is existing financially within the government at the moment that could be potentially tweaked, or using existing networks like the agricultural extension offices. Strengthening district and provincial capacity will also be important to ensure that they understand warnings and can support the implementation of actions to make it part of routine practice rather than ad hoc. And then finally, as I've mentioned, I think a couple of times now, is really invest in agromet infrastructure. So weather stations allowing us to collect better data that underpins what we're doing as well, but also connectivity. How can we reach these communities who currently suffer from not being able to connect to social media or connect to radio and transport routes to ensure that it's done in an effective and inclusive way. And that's my last slide. Thank you for listening. Erkin, did you want to go first?
Regarding, yeah, but just want to highlight that it was like 2 years ago where we were operational with Met Office, we were calculating, yeah. I think also in 3 years ago in Lao PDR, you also piloted. Catherine will give more information. But regarding this upcoming season, I cannot tell nothing because now I'm not operationally. I'm a secretary at WMO, and I don't have a last like information, yeah. But by that time, it was also we found, even for example in Lao PDRs, the north and south parts, they have different teleconnection with IOD, yeah? And so based on this topography, based on their climatic condition, and that's why we decide to use not this kind of like we decide to use this kind of AI-based bias correction of seasonal forecast, because the multicollinearity, and it can be take like train it with long-term and short-term memory for this like grid to grid. And yeah, I'm handovering to Catherine. Over.
Thanks so much, Erkin. Yeah, so at the moment, when it comes to the upcoming season as well, I think we're still in the spring predictability barrier at the moment. So it's very hard for us, I think, to make any assumptions at the moment with the upcoming season. I know that for FAO and ourselves, we're waiting more until, I think, end of April, early May to make some decisions about what this upcoming season could look like. Now, you may have seen in some conversations about NOAA, I think WMO is also saying a similar tune. IRI as well, is that there's potential for El Nino to develop at the end of this year. And it could be a super El Nino as well. Now, there's a 1, I think, in 3 chance they're saying at the moment for a super El Nino to emerge, but I do want to also pretense this that it's still an if. We don't know concretely at the moment because we're still waiting for that spring predictability barrier to break down for our forecasting to come through more stronger and more accurately. Because at the moment it's kind of a little bit fuzzy. It's not somewhere where I feel comfortable giving a definitive answer, and I feel many forecasters would feel the same way. So I think we're all kind of waiting with bated breath in April to see what comes to be. Now, if I remember correctly, for South Asia, when it comes to particularly El Nino, it does mean, I think, a wetter season, not necessarily a drier, but I'm happy to be corrected there. I know with Southeast Asia and the Pacific, that's where we start to see a kind of bulk of the droughts come through, but it does depend on how the Indian Ocean dipole exactly is kind of playing with this. It can emphasize, it can de-emphasize certain areas as well, and shift a little bit of the patterns. And the beauty of El Nino or La Nina, however it comes to be, is that we get better predictability. It gives us more of an accurate forecast more than anything, but unfortunately more on the intense scale of things, which is not what we want. Better accuracy is definitely what we want, but not as intense as we would like to see. We do in South Asia have a range of anticipatory action programming from Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, of course, Nepal, there's a range of really great, I think, pilots now. A lot of the pilots that have been done to date in South Asia focus on rapid onset. And Dr. Mazarul Aziz in the comments made a really good, I think, point here. He's like, well, with triggers, I'm used to a readiness and an action trigger. And that's because it's mainly for that rapid onset, for floods, for cyclones, where you only have maybe 5 to 3 days to do anticipatory action, maybe sometimes up to 10 days for flood. With drought, we're looking more at phases. So you're looking at implementation through what each month you're looking at your combined drought index as the information comes through and you can make a judgment of decisions. You're going across seasonality as well. You're looking at the rainy season. You're looking also at the planting season as well. Now, Pakistan does have a bit on drought at the moment. I think it's one of the few countries looking at in drought anticipatory action. Afghanistan as well has a lot that's being done. And really refining the combined drought index there too. And I know Bangladesh was looking a bit into it at the same time. So there's a lot of good lessons learned there and areas that we can potentially scale up collectively too. I hope that answered your question. I can talk until the cows come home, so people also have to stop me at the same time.
Both are very excellent talks. Thank you, both of you. Can you hear me? Yeah. So I have few queries. One is that suppose people are declaring their drought, but nowadays you know that when we have a crop of suppose 90 days or 120 days, that the crop duration. So, and if we have suppose the flowering stage, we have 10 or 15 days because you both of you cover the global phenomena and it's linked to the large scale seasonal droughts. But now you know that many times we get flash drought for the 10 to 15 days. That means if we have no rain at a time when crop needs more water, like a seeding stage or flowering stage, and where it needs more water, if that time 10 to 15 days there is no rain continuously, then it will lead to also agricultural drought because agriculture means we need total production. If it is substantial decrease due to shortage of rainfall or ET or as you told moisture availability, then we can have a short-term droughts. So are there any good methods are available to estimate that type of thing of 15, 20 days continuously there is no rain?
Yes, thank you, Professor Ohante. Catherine, let me try to respond to this question. So we are totally agree with you that flash drought, now we can exist. But this methodology, when we develop it and test it, like that time it was designed not for flash flood because we are using monthly time scale. But for flash drought, it should be using at least decadal or weekly time scales, because this kind of time scale. But for different methodology should be adjusted. But this one is like mainly, as you suggested, like let's say, I don't want to name like traditional, like normal drought, not flash drought. But for flash drought, so far I didn't see any like triggering methodologies for anticipatory action. But they were planned in that time for the Pakistan south part. There was some flash drought observed when we were piloting this methodology. That year in 2024, there was flash drought observed, and this methodology didn't like catch it because it showed like moderate drought, but it was severe drought within this dry spell, and also like it's extreme. It was progressed in 1.5 week, this flash drought. But in terms of flash drought, it was severe, but in terms of like indicator showed it's moderate drought. Catherine, do you want to complement?
No, I think you covered it nicely, but it is definitely an emerging area, Professor, and I think it's something that is you're rightly bringing up, is we're not only looking at these longer term kind of agricultural droughts where we see this kind of emerge from meteorological to hydrological, then to agriculture. We're seeing that we have these pockets of key growing times and then these 10, 15 days where they're actually starved of water, and then that leads to the whole crop dying. I've actually tested this theory myself when I was living in the desert in Australia, and I can definitely attest to this. So we're trying our best now to look at these flash droughts and seeing how we can come up with better methodologies for it, but it falls more into that rapid onset situation rather than that long, slow onset that we're used to with drought. So it's changing a bit that mindset, but it's very concentrated in Pakistan at the moment. But we would be super interested to hear from you, Professor, as well, if you think that there's other countries that we're seeing this phenomenon start to happen, that it shows that we really need to step up and look at ways of not only having the long-term agricultural drought in mind, but these critical periods of flash drought. So very new and upcoming, but seems to be a critical area that we need to really focus on moving forward.
Thank you very much. And I have a small query. Actually, with climate change, whether the even seasonal drought, it is increasing or it is remaining same as earlier, or there is a decreasing trend of the seasonal droughts, where both of you have done a lot of work. And suppose for Southeast Asia, because here maximum people are farming community. So if we want to give them a message of warning or long-term scenario with the climate change, whether our droughts are increasing trend or decreasing trend or remaining constant.
Yeah, Catherine, do you want to say? And then I will confirm.
Yeah. Sure thing. No, and I think that's a very interesting kind of follow-up. I think what we're seeing is climate change is always a tricky one. So I always get a bit wary to like blanket every country into one kind of hot pot. But what I'm seeing, I think, in countries is we are seeing intensity and frequency of events happen year on year based on when data started to be collected. So that is, I think, without a given. But what's interesting is to see the changing nature of these risks. And for me, what I brought up with the Papua New Guinea particular example is how they're coming on top of each other more and more. It's not just like, I feel like I can't just focus on drought now. I've got to focus on drought and flood, drought and cyclones and typhoons. Like everything's coming together in like one big kind of mix of things. So like for instance, in Vietnam and the Philippines, I know this is different to South Asia, but for instance, last year we saw in the Philippines 6 cyclones go through the country. Same in Vietnam, like it's one after the other. So yeah, it's something that we need to keep in trend. But Erkin, you go.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Erkin.
I think we have one more question from Pragya Das.
Yeah.
Sorry if I mispronounced your name. My apologies.
No, it's completely fine. So first of all, thank you to Dr. Erkin and Ms. Catherine for this excellent presentation. I'm Pragya Das, a sustainability consultant with a disaster management background, and I'm currently based in Paris, France. So my question is focused to Ms. Catherine. Your point on designing for the overlapping risk, which is particularly the drought flood sequence, was fascinating. But how do you structure the trigger mechanisms and interventions to stay multi-hazard ready? For instance, if drought-resistant seeds are distributed, but flooding occurs instead, how flexible are the action protocols and financing windows here? That's my query.
Such a good question. And I'm going to be completely honest. I don't think people have thought it through yet. And I think that's something that we need to move towards. And it's something that I have consistently seen, and now it makes me worried. Like when I'm doing programming, someone's like, "Oh, we're just going to focus on this risk." I'm like, like please let's not do that, because yes, we can give drought-resistant seeds, but then we have to think about ways of where is it being planted? Is it eventually going to, require? Is it going to be flooded? Is it in a flood risk area? So there's other elements. So I think we're learning in this. Well, I'm drastically learning. There might be people a bit more sophisticated in this approach than I am at the moment, but I think it's when we're planning for anticipatory action, it's not only looking at ways that what we're trying to protect and mitigate could be hit by one risk, but knowing that this compounding risk can come very quickly. And Papua New Guinea taught me that, because they moved all of their gardens to the riverbed, and within a night, gone. And they did that because it was we didn't recommend it. It wasn't something that we came in and did. They naturally did it as a community because they were running low on water in their tanks and, back near their homes. So we'll just push it, more towards the river. But then that led to catastrophic consequences. So I think it's when we're planning with communities and planning with government, it's plaiting things together a little bit more neatly. With the triggers, I would still keep them, very much with drought, very much with flood, having them speak to each other and monitor at the same time. Because of course there's flooding seasons and there's dry seasons, so you can kind of pinpoint it in there. But when you're doing your anticipatory actions, when you're implementing them, is thinking of, okay, in a year's time, this community might get hit by a flood. So if I'm going to do drought resistant seeds, let's do it in areas where they can be, protected, or if they are submerged for up to 7 days in water. I know there's some rice varieties that you can keep underwater for a long period of time, bless rice and its ability to stay underwater for long periods of time. Or, they have the ways to, breach, water out quickly from where they're planting. So it's thinking all of these different dynamics through when we're planning with the community. And I hopefully in a year's time, maybe when we meet up again, I'll have better answers, but that's my current solution for now. But willing to share learnings, and hopefully we get some more really great learning in the years to come.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Nabansu. So I can speak about my experience because back to 10 years ago, I was also agrometeorologist in NHMS. and also with FAO like leading this field. There is no any like common one formula, yeah, based on the region to region, based on climatic condition, based on data availability. Different indexes could work best, yeah. But I think the approach with combined drought indexes, it can work, because based on this your data availability, based on your preference, you can use any like indexes inside of common drought indexes. Just one example, yeah. For example, SPI, as we saw, like for the tropics, yeah. For example, for PNG or Timor-Leste, where the temperature variation is not so high, more or less this diurnal and monthly variation is similar, yeah. Amplitude of temperature is not so high. Only like variable is rainfall, yeah, is changing very high. So that's case. If you are using SPI or SPI or Palm Index, they will give the same, more or less same results. But in some countries, more like in Central Asia, where this day and time temperatures change very, like amplitude is very huge, and just using SPI not be might be enough, because they have very huge evapotranspiration, and using this SPEI and other. But this is like just for example, it's also like predicting, yeah. But if they have like in some countries, we can see this, as you mentioned, remote sensing derived soil moisture, they have a lot of biases. But also they're doing this kind of bias adjustment with in situ data, yeah, trained by AI, yeah. AI trained and bias corrected soil moisture and other. So if they have like from country to country, from region to region, based on their data availability, not only like real time but also historical, for this kind of bias correction, this common drought index or combined drought index can be included, because for understanding current situation of, for example, if you are just using SPI, we can just take in account rainfall, yeah, but we don't have take in account this evapotranspiration. But based on the region to region, if it's high mountain or like valley, based on this crop canopy, surface layer, different evapotranspiration, yeah. If you, because just rainfall based like monitoring and forecasting, it will be misalerting. From Central Asia, for example, where I'm from Kyrgyzstan, it's lessons learned. That's why we have to take in account uh, all available data resource like NDVI and TCI derived like vegetation health index, sometime also like soil moisture, and of course SPI like monitor it for last month, or and also predict it. But for prediction, so far we have only rainfall and temperature prediction, more or less in like let's say in not so like some certain like performance, eh? And also by using the bias correction kind of combined things, it will give like what current condition is, and also if you have this kind of things, this kind of things will be progress. It's like using combined drought index, including region-based like data availability and also climatic condition, physiological condition. This is, I think, best approach. And also, if there is a lot of data, is AI is a good way to like do this mining, data mining, because it's automatically you can resolve this kind of multi-collinearity effect, because all of them they carry some signals and they have also interconnected, and this is multi-collinearity. And but if you are using this kind of AI tools, it's automatically taking account that's already interconnected. And also stochastic model is broke down because of climate change, patterns of atmosphere is changing, but they have long-term, short-term memory in this. I'm not promoting AI, but I can see this kind of like advantage. Or
Thank you for having us. Appreciate your time and lovely to see everyone and speak to this topic. Hopefully see everyone soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.